All right, cool. Well, if there's no questions there, thank you, Rachel. We'll move on to the Airflow Grid Expectations Operator that Benji from Astronomer will be presenting.
Yeah, thanks, Kyle. So let me share my screen here. Here we are. Okay. So, hey everyone, I'm Benji. I'm a platform architect here at Astronomer. I'm also a bit of an Airflow advocate. We've been working with the Grid Expectations team and some other partners for a little while now on upgrading this Grid Expectations operator. And so we're going to go through and just talk about, what does that mean? What's new in the operator? How can you use it? And how can you get started integrating this with Airflow? But first, before we jump into those changes, just one quick word about Astronomer. For those of you who don't know us, we're the Airflow company. Basically, we try and make it as easy as possible to get up and running with Airflow, so you don't have to focus on a lot of the heavy lifting details working with Kubernetes or putting it up on the cloud or any of the infrastructure stuff, and being able to just build and test DAGs really, really quickly and easily. That's what we're all about. So as part of that, we work a lot with the community to make sure that all the integrations are as good as possible. And I'm really happy to say that with the Grid Expectations operator, I think we had like a really big win here. So let's get right into it. What's new? So the first thing to note is the operator is moved from v0.0.x to 0.1.x, which means that it is like officially sanctioned. So it is like no longer just experimental. Now it runs with the v3 API, which, as mentioned in this call earlier, is the new direction. And I'm sure you've all seen the big announcements earlier in Slack about that. So no need to explain why a v3 API upgrade is a good thing here. The biggest thing that we're going to get into a little more detail is these 3 points at the bottom here. So we're focused more on the checkpoint model now, which just means that using the operator is a lot easier, and the operator's logic itself has been simplified to use this model. Previously, the Grid Expectations operator only really worked with the BigQuery backend, and that's been updated now. So any data source that Grid Expectations can use, the operator can use as well. So and the connection there has been really simplified, and we'll talk about that in just a second. And the last big change is that there's many ways to configure the operator now. There's a bunch of really cool parameters, and you can do a lot of overriding per checkpoint. So you can get really specific about the things you want to run and when. So the orchestration piece is really smooth. So let's jump into each one a little more in depth here. So this is the new checkpoint config. As you can see, it's just a Python dictionary. And we have, basically just using it as a template here to put the checkpoint together. And this is really nice because, as we'll see later, we can just overwrite any of these parameters. And for all of the checkpoints that you want to configure, you can write one of these checkpoint configs, maybe in like a util file, and then import them all to your DAGs and use them directly with the operator. So you have a really clean way of putting this stuff together from the get-go. Then the, different data sources. In the v2 version of the operator, you had the Grid Expectations BigQuery operator. This was like a bit of a challenge to get this thing going, because not only did you have to create all the Airflow connections, you also had to make sure that your whole Grid Expectations project was living in the right places in GCP, and making sure that you always specified all the correct paths. And then on top of setting up your project in GCP, you also had to make sure that your BigQuery data set was existing and correct and in the right place. And so it was a lot of overhead to get it to work, and a lot of careful attention to make sure that it could keep working. So the change on the Grid Expectations operator v3 side, as we see in the parameters, there's nothing to do with connections here. We don't have a single argument that directly says, hey, what's our connection story? And what it is now is either in the data context root directory or in your data context. And the data context is also basically just a dictionary like we saw with the checkpoint. You're just going to specify your data source. And once that data source is specified and that connection is made on the Great Expectations side, then your checkpoint will run the data set in that backend for you. And it's just that simple. There's no like big heavy lifting. You don't have to set up a whole project in your backend data source. It's just run. So here is what the Great Expectations operator actually looks like in a DAG. As we can see, we have the usual task ID here, and then we have different ways of configuring that data context. We have the root directory in these first two operators, and then in the second two, we have, in the third one, we have the data context config, which isn't shown here for space because it's a very long dictionary, or at least can be. And then we see the same thing with the checkpoint name versus checkpoint config. And we see in the top one here, these checkpoint KW args. Those are what allow us to kind of overwrite specific fields in that checkpoint that we're passing in. And then we also have this cool fail task on validation failure, and we have either that as a Boolean or there's a validation failure callback, so that we can maybe do some logging or other logic that we want to do if something fails. So really easy to use this operator and put it together. And even though it has a bunch of different parameters, they work all pretty well together, and the operator itself doesn't get too complicated. So we have some time, I think. So I want to run through a little demo, and we can just take a look at what one of these actually looks like. So I'm going to just pop over to my Airflow tab here, and hopefully my scheduler is still running. It is. So we have a DAG here. This is a demo DAG that I put together using this new operator. And it's basically just a really simple Snowflake ETL example. And we can see here, we're just going to upload some data to S3. We're going to create a Snowflake table. We're going to load that data in from the local machine. We're going to run our Great Expectations suite on it, and then we're going to clean up the table. So, just to show you that it actually works here, we're going to trigger the DAG, and we're going to let it run. You can share with a cool graph view. Do we have any questions or comments about the operator while this is going? If not, I can just keep talking about this for a little bit longer. So we see we have our data loaded into Snowflake. We're running the validation suite right now. And then we're going to check on the logs and see what that looks like. So we see that it passed, and we cleaned up the table. So we can just pop into the task and see here that the test ran and the test succeeded. Validation, Great Expectations successful. And we can pop in and look at the code real quick. What does this DAG actually look like? We can just run through this real quick. So we have here all of our Snowflake configs are getting imported. So we're just keeping those in a separate file so it doesn't clutter up the DAG here. We have all of our root directory and path variables here. And then we have the actual DAG. So here we have a bunch of default args, and the default args are just all of our Snowflake connections, because most of our operators here are going to take these Snowflake arguments. So sometimes it's easier to just throw a bunch of the connection stuff up there so it doesn't clutter up the DAG later. Here we see we have our local file system, the S3 operators are actually loading. I misspoke earlier. We're actually loading the data to S3 first, and then we're transferring it from S3 to Snowflake. So then we have our create table here, really easy. We're just including a really simple SQL statement here to create the table. We have the same thing here, is a SQL statement that deletes the table in a different file outside the DAG. We move the data from S3 to Snowflake, and then we run our expectation suite here, and we can see it's just a simple 3-liner because we have these checkpoint configs and data context config already set. So, and we're not doing any callbacks or anything. So actually having the suite run is super simple. It's 4 lines, and then we schedule it in the DAG. And that's it. Oh,
Nice.
I'd also like to know, on the topic of docs real quick, the getting started with Airflow and Great Expectations docs on the Great Expectations site has also been updated to reference this new operator. So if you're looking to get started and don't remember everything that I said, there is documentation for it. You can go at your own pace.
Nice. Do we have the link? We should drop the link for that in the chat.
Yeah, I can drop the link there. Yeah, and big shout out to Tal for his work on the operator there. He did a lot of heavy lifting, so yeah, big round of applause. If you ever meet him in person, buy him a coffee or something. I know I owe him at least one, so.
Thanks. It was great working with Benji and the whole team at Astronomer on this. So thank you.
Cool.
Well,
yeah. Thanks.
That's it for me.
Thanks, Benji. I really appreciate it. Always a pleasure to work with the Astronomer team. Yeah, and we're looking for people who use the operator. If you're interested in collaborating on some content, talking about your use case, we would love to hear from you. We're starting to find some people now who have been using the operator, and we're seeing some really, really cool use cases. So yeah, feel free to reach out to any of us on Slack, me or Benji or Tal, if you're using the operator and have some feedback. All right, so yeah, that is, let's see, a question popped in. See, that looks great. How could this work if Great Expectations were a separate service from Airflow, i.e. run container inside of through our Airflow instance? Benji or Tal, you want to take that?
I think you could set up your stores in a third-party place. You could put your stores for different things on S3 or in GCS. And then you could reference like a local data context, or you could pass in the in-memory data context like Benji had showed. And so I think it wouldn't matter too much if those were separated.
Oh, yes, the operator did run some validations. I didn't actually show the checkpoint suite or those files, but if you go through the files, I can link the GitHub repo that these DAGs are in as well, and you can see that it does run 12 suites. So when we looked at the log there, we actually saw that it ran 12 different checks on the data. But yeah, I didn't specify that, so it's an easy thing to miss. But yeah, thank you for asking.
Cool, thanks for dropping that deployment pattern.
Yeah, in terms of, I don't think you can access the report directly through Airflow. You might be able to configure something custom so that like you could drop a link to Datadocs if Datadocs are hosted remotely. But I'm not sure what the details of that would look like.
Cool. And Benji, I'll drop that link into the Slack channel. I'll drop those links. It looks like. Oh no, is that the same one? No, they're two different.
Yeah, the one is specifically to the DAGs, and then the other is to include the actual like Great Expectations project. There's just
I'm
there's a
gonna
lot
drop
of
that.
there's a lot of DAGs in that repository, so I wanted to make sure it wouldn't get lost.
Okay, good. I'll also just drop those links into Slack, and I'll make sure that it's connected to the recording as well for the presentation. Let me make sure I grab all those. Or Benji, I'll get them. If you could DM them to me in Slack, that'd be great. And then I'll make sure to attach them to the recording for everyone. Great. Let's see. Oh, got another one. Let's see. Are there any plans to have operator support running GPU support?
It's a good question. I mean, it can work with Spark. There's not really a way to run the DAG, I think, within Databricks. So I'm not sure how that would work. So I would say no immediate plans, but like happy to have a conversation over in Slack if you have any ideas of how that could be implemented. I'm happy to like help with a contribution if that's something in which you're interested. Yeah.
Yeah, I think for context, we do use currently Great Expectations. We run it like inside Databricks jobs from like an Airflow task triggers like a Databricks jobs, which runs Great Expectations checkpoints. I was wondering if there is like any plans to simplify that and have it like as an operator.
Yeah, I would say I don't think there are immediate plans, but I believe we're also doing some work with Databricks. And so it's possible that there could be some combination there of different things. So yeah, maybe yeah, please post in the Slack. There's specifically a channel called Integration Airflow. Please post there and like let's keep talking.
Yeah, got it. Thanks.
Thanks.
Yeah, good call out for that Slack channel. Yeah, great place to go to talk about the operator. Cool. All right. Well, I think we'll wrap it up from here. If you have any more questions, jump into that Slack channel. Tal will be in there, Benji will be in there, other people will be supporting it. One thing I'll call out is that if you want to present your use case of Great Expectations, or one of your contributions to Great Expectations at a community meetup, let me know. I'd be happy to schedule you. And yeah, and keep an eye out for that hackathon. We're going to be starting it on February 16th. One other thing to check out is we're starting to look for design partners for Great Expectations Cloud. I see that Ben Castleton is in here. Ben, do you want to give a quick shout out, and I can drop a link for a sign up?
Oh, that's good what you've said. Just
Yeah, okay.
Just that there is, we're working with a few select design partners on the cloud product and getting feature feedback. So appreciate that from the people who have helped out in the community. Thanks.
Yeah, thanks, Ben. And if it's just if you're just interested in following the progress of cloud and learning more about it, and maybe eventually it'll be a fit for you, definitely sign up, and we'll keep you up to date on the progress of the project. Yeah. All right. Well, thanks again, everyone, for coming, and I'll see you next month.